when it comes to Australian politics, there was one great sin that Peter Dutton was involved in, and for it he must pay, as must Jacinta Price, as must the 60% of Australians who denied the Prime Minister his place in history. And that, of course, was when we collectively as a country decided to vote no. Now, remember, this started out as 60-40 yes. Now, straight after that, all roads, all criticisms, the only thing that the government could say was not to defend itself on immigration policy that's wildly out of control, on cost of living pressures that they continue to make worse, on issues like the biggest number of homeless people of all time in Australia. No, no, no. This next election is all about stopping the Aussie version of Donald Trump.
Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton.
Peter Dutton.
Focus, focus, focus. Endlessly ramp up. Let's pretend that Peter Dutton, the Liberal Party, anyone to the centre-right in Australian politics is just as bad as the worst of the MAGA crowd, and in their heart are people who would storm the Capitol if they could. Now, this is an ugly political tactic, and it's one thing to argue against an opposition, but they are, of course, so ridiculously focused and personally focused on the bloke who has been right on how many issues. I repeat, he was where 60% of the Australian population was, not the Prime Minister, who started out with 60% of the Australian population. Yet, as you know, the entire focus of the government, their supporters in the media, is get Dutton, name Dutton, scandalise Dutton, throw as much mud as possible to make it seem like there's something weird about the guy. Remember when he was talking about the ticks and crosses in the lead up to the referendum? Well, of course, they all started threat to democracy, undermining our electoral system. The Prime Minister, immediately after being embarrassed, after wasting $450 million, as James Campbell outed in the Sunday papers, that Anthony Albanese's already fired up a dirt unit, all of it, to target Peter Dutton. Now, let's be honest, there's been a dirt unit that's been run by many a person against Peter Dutton for a long time, most notably and obviously people that at one point in time were the Prime Minister of this country. They have failed to come up with the smoking gun or even the smoke about why Peter Dutton is a threat to the democracy. Now, the media people, of course, who are often fed by the dirt unit because they often resemble much of the things that a dirt unit would come up with about the endless perils and evils of Peter Dutton, are some of the people who have had face-to-face meetings with the Prime Minister. Now, it is thanks to the work of Rex Patrick, the former senator from South Australia, that he was even able to lobby and to push and to eventually break the arm of the government to tell us what was going on for the first 6 months of the government. In the reporting on the website he was working for, print journalists afforded the opportunity of a one-on-one meeting with the Prime Minister, included Guardian Australia's political editor, Catherine Murphy, who of course now works for the Prime Minister. The Sydney Morning Herald columnist, Nasty Nikki Sava, well, she does her work for the Prime Minister outside of his office. The hit job man, that is, Peter Harcher, the National Affairs correspondent, James Massola, in fairness, a good bloke. Network 10 political editor, Peter Van Onselen, hardly pro-Liberal. The 7 News political editor, Mark Riley. And the Foreign Affairs editor of The Australian, Greg Sheridan. I don't think he's in reception too much of the dirt unit, but certainly he got face-to-face time. But let's focus in on 3 of the people who are those most sympathetic to the Prime Minister. We certainly know Catherine Murphy is because, as I said, she went straight from the Turnbull Times into the office of the Prime Ministers. No doubt telling them how journalists get their stories, and no doubt part of the reason why there's the explosion, I would suggest, in NDAs and making sure nobody could dare leak what's going on or what the plans are, just a guess. Then, of course, there's Nasty Nikki Sava, and she, of course, never misses an opportunity to turn around and say Peter Dutton is the end of the Liberal Party. This program, this channel is the end of democracy, all that garbage. Dutton and Lee have created a foolproof of what not to do election guide. All, of course, because she said that they had to win the Dunkley by-election. She set that standard, by the way, nobody else. The antics of Liberal men will cost the party at the next election. When it comes to Peter Harcher, well, he gets to swan around, doesn't he? After saying things like Morrison might not have held a hose, but Dutton doesn't hold a policy. Where do these people make their most frequent television appearances to run the lines, the narrative that come out of places like the Dirt Unit? Well, of course, over on Channel 2. So often on a Sunday morning, they're constantly opining there or over on ABC Radio over and over again. And they've been handed a new playbook of all of the evils that is Peter Dutton, trying to turn him into the Australian version of Donald Trump. Now, I'll be honest, I was not aware that the quarterly essay was focused on Peter Dutton, but it was, and it has been released a couple of weeks ago. There was a review of it in the Australian newspaper today, which is why I want to point you to this. Now, previously, people like Laura Tingle, you know, so middle of the road. She's previously told us that New Zealand was a place via Jacinta Ardern that Australia had so much to learn from. Of course, she ended up bailing before the Labor Party got bashed at an election, so I assume we don't need any more lessons out of New Zealand. But this is all about the bad cop. Let me read you some of the blurb here. Leave it up on screen because I want to read it here. Or if we actually, let's show the quotes. Dutton became Liberal leader with a strategy to win outer suburban and regional seats from Labor. Since then, we've seen his demolition of the voice and a rolling campaign of culture wars, because apparently if you disagree with anything the government's currently doing, problem. You are part of a culture war. What does Peter Dutton know about the Australian electorate? Has he updated Menzies' Forgotten People pitch for the age of anxiety? Or will he collapse the Liberals' broad church? Direct quote from one of the people, from the bloke who wrote the whole thing. Doesn't this sound like the beginnings of the Aussie Trump narrative? Dutton doesn't need to become Prime Minister to redraw the battle lines of Australian politics. His fight with Albanese over parochial voters was always going to drag the political conversation rightwards. Because remember, when the Labor Party wins, it's a revolution forever. When the Liberal Party wins, it's because of cheating. You know, the people who truly believe in democracy, right? On race, on immigration, gender, the pace of transition away from fossil fuels, Dutton's raison d'etre, make Australia afraid again. Oh, we're even using the Trump Make America Great Again, but we've come up with our own version, Make Australia Afraid Again. Then he will offer himself as the lesser of two evils, a serious strongman in the age of anxiety. Bum, bum, bum. And of course, where does this new playbook for Dutton is Aussie Trump, where do they go to promote it? Oh, that's right, straight onto the ABC. So between what you hear on the radio, Dutton's a problem, Dutton's a problem, Dutton's a problem. Dutton was the one who somehow is going to deny you $275 on power. Dutton's the one who promised to do something about cost of living, but has failed to do so. Dutton is the one who put up your petrol prices by increasing it from 23 to 49 cents a litre. Dutton is the one who's brought in near record immigration, meaning, of course, that the housing crisis that continues off the back of it, oh, that's all Peter Dutton's fault, you see. All day, every day. But I just wanted you to know, where are they getting their talking points? Because no doubt, if they don't get them from the Dirt Unit, and they don't get their messages from the Sunday morning program, and they don't get that from the columnists who get their legitimacy in part because they appear on the Sunday morning political program, you can get it from the quarterly essay, which only Greens voters will probably read.